It's time to talk about the conclusion of the challenge, the battle of the eras. This was an iconic season because it was the 40th season, a special where they brought back players from all of the eras of the challenge and themed the season around it. It brought back some of the greatest players to play the game, with some questionable picks mixed in, but still the way that it was presented was that this was gonna be a truly iconic season, and I was really looking forward to it going in. And honestly, I still have those opinions, like, I really do think this was one of the best new seasons of the challenge we've gotten in a long time, and I stand firm with it. Now, let us talk about the best and the worst from this season. Let us start off with the daily challenges, with the best from the top 4 and the bottom 4. The Era Invitational is just an honorable mention since it's at the very beginning of the season and featured every player as an individual versus a team, and they had to fight for their place in the game. The top 4 for daily challenges are Gladiator, Bottoms Out, Doomed, and Another Trucker. Each of these daily challenges showcased each player's ability to either work in a team or perform highly to either improve their team standing or as an individual, as both Gladiator and Doomed were the most physically demanding dailies and showed who could perform at their highest during those situations. And Bottoms Out and Other Trucker showed if a player could perform well if they are by themselves. I especially like the performances from the daily winners from such as Kylan and Tori from Dune and Derek from Another Trucker, as well as Rachel from Bottoms Out. Now, the bottom 4 daily challenges were Cloud Catcher, Leap of Faith, Fire Plunge, and Fortress Bricks. All of these daily challenges were not great at all. Like, Cloud Catcher, I don't understand how that daily challenge worked at all. It was very confusing, and it just seemed poised for disaster. Same with Leap of Faith. This should have been one of the simplest challenges, but somehow, right when the first person jumped off of the building, something went wrong, and it completely impeded that team so that they could not win. However, all the other teams did completely fine. So very much flawed. Fire Plunge was just boring, and Fortress Bricks probably has one of the most controversial daily win results in challenge history, as the puzzle was very hard to understand, and some impromptu checks resulted in some undeserved feedback. Now, for the saying his now the eliminations. Season 40 had some of the best eliminations in the season, as we started off with the four of the most iconic eliminations in challenge history, such as Balls In, Hall Brawl, Pole Wrestle, and Take Shelter, which is a new elimination, but it had one of the most iconic results, so that's why it was included. Now, the top 4 eliminations were One Step at a Time, Getting Hammered, Fortification, and Closing Time. Hey, I really liked the outcome of all of these eliminations, especially Fortification and Closing Time, as it showcased Michelle and Derek, having to prove themselves both from in a strategic sense, physical sense, and just heart sense. I don't know if that's necessarily a word to use, but I'm using it. Each of these eliminations, you had to use your brain and have the physical endurance in order to complete it and not gas out, which is what happened, which was what Darrell and Avery did when they won one step at a time. And like I said before, for Michelle and Derek put on a clinic against their opponents, Naya and Corey, in fortification and closing time. And well, getting hammered was just very cool as Tina beat the undefeated Emily and Nehemiah had an upset against CT. It was just a very unique elimination. The bottom four eliminations were Pick It Up, To the Point, Killer Quads, and Cramping Out. I did not like these eliminations at all. Pick It Up had one of the biggest controversies in recent years with Derek beating Horacio. I just did not like To the Point. I did not understand how that elimination was going to work. I'm honestly surprised it worked the way it did. I saw there's no way the spikes were going to be able to land on the balls were going to land on the spikes. The Killer Quads, that's not an elimination game. That's just determining who is the better driver between Bananas and Brian. Terrible idea. And Cramping Out clearly didn't favor whoever was taller. So it's basically, CO was screwed before the game even started. Now, the teams and the individual stages combined with targets, the truly great twist of the season. I really like targets. I also think elimination winners should be able to do something when the elimination would rather than just go back into the house, and it really put players who thought that they would have an easy ride to the final in hard situations every single week. And yes, it made it so certain players were immune, but honestly, with a cast like this and such wide stakes, I think this was the route to go because we've been seeing years on end that players with more relationships just are able to coast, whereas players who don't have key relationships just get thrown in over and over and over again until they go home. This twist made it so that that didn't happen. Hmm. The season obviously started off with teams representing the four eras, era 1, 2, 3, and 4. That made sense. That was how the game was always going to start, and I really liked the concept. I really liked how the season was formatted around it. Now, as for the individual stage, I personally liked it. I mean, I always knew when the seasons were started they were going to go into individual. I would have liked it if they would stay into teams, but like I did not think for 1 second that they were going to stay in teams the entire season. I completely expected this. So brains, I have more brains, I guess. I don't know. Just I saw it was a predictable twist. I was surprised when other people were surprised. I wasn't. Now, some of most some of the most talked about alliances were the Bananas Angel Alliance and the Vacation Alliance. Also, I guess we have the alliance within the teams during the team stage. The Era 1 Alliance, 2, 3, and 4. That's how the season at least started, with your team being your main alliance, and then you having your individual relationships across the different era teams. That was really how good that was a good starting point to the season. Once we got to the individual stage, it became the remnants of the Vacation Alliance because some of the members were taken off the board during the team stage versus the Bananas Angels Alliance, which was Bananas, Rachel, Jenny, Aviv, and Laurel. Really do. I really liked how this season went when we got to that stage because it became these two opposing alliances, which massive power just going at each other. We haven't seen a two-sided house in a while, and it was very fun to watch. And it brought really incredible fights between the two sides, especially between Bananas and Michelle, who provided much of the drama this season. And I don't know, Josh did some things when it came to alliance fighting and flip-flopping as well and just tr trying to be a presence on the show. It was fun, and I'm not a big person who loves drama and just people going at each other and just, like, hating each other, but this was more of the tolerable challenge of fighting that I personally like to see. We this season, we also got some relationships and love in the year with the 2 main couples coming out of this who in Devin and Michelle and Sio and Olivia. Those are 2 very strong couples coming out of the season, and they're still together and still very much in love. So that's good to see, and we'll have to wait to see how that ends up. All right, now let's talk about the other twist of the season, the karma points. This is what I have to say about the karma points. Yeah, that's what I have to say. But in all seriousness, I think this was a twist that was okay conceptually, but it just fell terribly, and it wasn't a good twist in the end, and it should never, ever, 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 ever be repeated again. Now, the final, I think this was a very unique final, as the final usually incorporates a lot of running, long distance running. This was long distance swimming, and i- as far as like difficulty and if it matches up to the whole season 40 big anniversary special final, I don't think it was necessarily one of the hardest finals that they've ever done, but I think it's definitely not one of their worst. Like, if I were to say, like, give it a point system or categorize it, I would say like top 8 to like maybe 13. Like, I think the fact that I think long distance swimming, especially if you do it as far as they did and in the ocean, is extremely difficult, and I did like how they had this boat that they drove around to the different checkpoints. I thought that was a good a good thing that they've never done in a final before, having the contestants transported to different locations. Normally, they just have to get there themselves. As far as, like, the checkpoints go, I thought some of them were creative, and others were a bit underhanded and lowballed, not very exciting, but I don't really discount the final because of it. And as far as, like, equal and opportunistic, I think really it all depends on the player's skill on how easy the final was for them. Kylan could not swim, so he struggled very hard. Jordan could swim extremely well, so he did outperformed everyone. And Derek and Bananas had the same level of skills, so they constantly were at war with each other and who was going to get second. And the women were very skilled, each having their own strengths and weaknesses, and depended on what they could do in the final to determine who was going to win or to lose. And ultimately, it came down to luck and some very luck and, well, just being skilled at certain checkpoints while also not failing at them. Ultimately, the final in the rest of the season resulted in 3 champions, which is something that hasn't happened in a long time. We usually only have 2 or 1. Now, time to talk about the any season of reality TV that I like talking about the most, the cast. This season brought together 40 of the most iconic players from the 4 different eras and brought them together for this special iconic season. So, let's talk about the players who impacted this season the most. I'm not going to talk about the 8 cast members that were eliminated during the Arab Invitational. They weren't on the season long enough. I'm not going to talk about them. Just saying that right now, honorable mention, I guess. Tony. I think Tony definitely had a splash, had an impact in the 3 episodes he was here for. Here being on the bottom of Era 3, and he had power and decided to make the most boneheaded move in sticking his ground to try to get his way against a clearly equally stubborn player that actually was in the right with the decision. It just wasn't his decision. He got his comeuppance, and if he was there for the paycheck, good, go. We don't need to see you again. Tony Time clocking out permanently. And a little bit the same with Horacio. He didn't really do much this season. He was viewed as the big threat just based on reputation. He ultimately lost his elimination to Derek in the most controversial elimination of the season. He's fine with the outcome now. He's seen the raw footage. It's all out in the open, but he still doesn't want to return to the challenge and wants to clock out for good. If he doesn't want to come back, fine. Okay, if you're going to act like this after losing, okay, good, go. But if you want to come back, you still have a really good shot of winning a season and becoming a champion. I guarantee it. Now, Emily. I was really excited to see Emily return. She hasn't returned for a single season of the challenge since Rivals 2 or Chance for the Stars 2. And I really feel like Emily was the most screwed player this season, not based on an actual elimination or a daily. Well, sort of daily because Laura was extremely jealous of her. No, I was talking about how the show presented her as sort of like this touchy-feely girl that was her storyline was mainly about her showmance with Brad, which I honestly did not like. I felt like the show was making it super cheesy and just making a joke out of it. Emily is one of the most strongest competitors of the challenge, and I feel like if anyone should have gotten the respect of a grand return, it should have been Emily, but instead she was made a joke out of. So I didn't like that. Johnny, two-time All-Star champion, flamed out a little bit too early. He made partially because of her own paranoia. I want to see a return. We're going to see a return in All Stars 5. I just want to see her get a fair shake. She hasn't had the best luck in ever since her getting her second win in All Stars 3. Tina. Tina made a very boisterous impact this season, probably being one of the loudest cast members in the confessionals. She had some very funny moments. She actually performed very well compared to her previous 3 All-Stars appearances. So, as far as what I think I came out of All-Stars 4 saying, "We don't need to see Tina back," but now, I'm not saying we need to see Tina back, but I like Tina more than before. I especially now that I think she can actually compete. I really liked Avery this season. I liked Avery during All Stars 4. Her big stance against Tony, she was very highly celebrated for it. She had her moment. She made her stand. I really liked her. I liked her after that. She wasn't very showed much after that. I think she only got like a couple confessionals, but I remember this one confessional that did that was very funny and I really liked. She said, "I am a pervert for sherbert." That was not intentional. I did not laugh. That was not an intentional laugh. I think she's a very good competitor and very funny confessional. So I would like to see her back. Derek, one word, heart of heart. He has a warrior heart. He was battered, bruised, and beaten, and it did not he did not go down swinging, especially against Corey. One small difference would have made a huge impact. Derek hasn't had the best showing in a few seasons, but he really had a good showing this season, and I want to see him back again as soon as he heals. He really was beaten and broken. Devin probably had the biggest impact on the general season this season after he was eliminated out of everyone who was eliminated. As his name kept going throughout the season, was his relationship with Michelle, his friendship with Tori, the feud with Bananas that really molded the season once we got to the individual stage. Devin did try to control everything. He built this empire out of making deals. He tried to implement the same strategy this season. It did sort of work, but, like, he was spread way too thin. So, like, if he's in a much smaller cast with a few select names that he wants to keep close to him, I think he can really dominate the season again. Ryan, I'm not gonna say much about an individual stance, performance-wise. He didn't do much. I just think he's very funny and good in confessionals, and I would like to see him again simply for that. He's what I would call cannon fodder. Naya didn't perform the best, had some conflict along the way. I think what Naya brings is something that not many challengers want to do, which is just hook up. She's a very beautiful, gorgeous woman, and she likes to express it. She was in multiple show matches with Josh and Kyland, and that created some drama. I'm not. I think Naya does provide something to the challenge. Laurel. I'm not going to say much about Laurel. She sucks. Moving on. Nehemiah. Nehemiah didn't actually get to do much this season, but I really always like Nehemiah. I think he's amazing. He's a good guy, and really like to see him get another championship. So bring Nehemiah back. Theo. He did not perform great. He didn't perform well at all this season, which is there's a real difference between the War of the World CO and the CO that we got here. If he can get back to that previous level, he'll be a threat once again. So whatever's going on with CO, please get back to your old self. And Josh, if you're friends with everyone, you're friends with no one, and if you're in alliance with all your friends, none of your friends will be in alliance with you, unless you're Bananas, who's desperate for friends. It's that simple, Josh. If you want to make it to a final, don't put yourself in these precarious situations that you can't get out of. You can't win an elimination, so make sure you don't go into an elimination. Perform well in all the daily challenges, and don't upset anyone and screw yourself to get thrown into elimination. Then you might be able to get fourth place in a final. It's really that simple. Aviv had the biggest return of the season waiting 20 years to return to this iconic season. I wasn't sure how she was going to necessarily perform given her lack of experience compared to everyone else, but she was a champion. She became an angel, and she performed really well this season, making it super deep. And if it wasn't for her her messing up in a daily challenge and going up against Jenny in a clear clear physical elimination that was completely against her, could have made it to the final again. As far as like the angels go, I think she has the least amount of drama surrounding her, and if she wants to return again, I think she could be a real threat. She's great with puzzles. She's good socially. I never thought I'd say this, but can Aviv become a regular? Corey, the Elimination King this season, really well done. But he sort of has the inverse of what Josh's problem is. He is friends with really no one, but expects people to be his friend and for him to just simply say, "You're not my number one, you're not my number two. I expect that loyalty from you." You can't just say those sort of things and just expect people to say to go along with it. You need to actually be friends with them. Not everyone is has a friendship and a brotherly love for you like Nelson. So you need to actually put in the work and the effort to become their friend so that they'll actually have your back. Fought to the end, but could not get it done. Cara Maria. Cara actually had didn't do much this season. She got into a fight with Laurel, which she was in the right for defending Michelle. She I think her biggest accomplishment was breaking the cycle with Laurel and saying, "I'm done with this. I don't wanna be a part of this anymore," which I commend her on. Break the cycle. Laurel was toxic. So, if you wanna come back, great. I'd love to see you again. Maybe you'll get a third championship if the final doesn't become all about water again. And now we've reached the finalists. Kyland. Kyland's a calculator. Clearly one of the top performers this season, out to his being at the same level as Jordan, which is very impressive. Perhaps if you make it to another final and it's all land-based, you can actually become a champion. Tori. I just don't like Tori. Okay? I've never liked Tori, and honestly, if you guys have a problem with that, I don't care. I haven't had I haven't gotten over what happened in the World Championship and her part in it. And even though she was presented more positively this season, I still just don't like her. That's just it. Bananas. Big role this season with the whole Devin feud and going against Michelle and Tori and the whole Bananas Angels. As always, Bananas who shines bright and who causes a lot of chaos and drama within the castle. I think Bananas will always be a part of the challenge. That's just a given, and I'm cool with it. My favorite player of all time, Michelle. She finally made it to a final and was 1 point away from becoming a champion. Mm, that's not a little bit. She proved herself in eliminations, winning 3 of them. She was in hookups with Devin, and now they're in a full-blown relationship. And she was really big into the drama and the social dynamics. It was the storyline for a lot of the season was Michelle versus Bananas, making Michelle a focal point within the season. So that's 2 seasons in a row where Michelle had a huge part in a challenge season. She was the mastermind in Battle of the New Champion, and now she was sort of the quote unquote underdog figure in this season. I think Michelle really has a good chance in being in every given challenge, every single season of the challenge moving forward, and I like it. She's my favorite player of all time. Derek, who got second place in the final, mm, who really showed how to perform a master social game, not getting upset, not being targeted by anyone, not in the sense that people want to throw him in. Of course, he got targeted a couple times, but he really showed how to perform really well, and put on a real good showing. I think he definitely showed why he's a threat and a really good player, and no one's going to underestimate him from now on. Now to our champions. Rachel, the underdog era 1 champion. Honestly, I saw people going into the season, and especially once Rachel was the last era 1 person standing, people will be on Rachel's side, but it seems like her becoming an angel turned people against her, even though she was an underdog the underdog from era 1. That was interesting. I don't see Rachel coming back, but she's now a three-time champion. There's only 3 women in the history of the challenge that has 3 championships, so she's a truly an elite player. Jenny, he the British bombshell who is now a two-time champion. I definitely feel like Jenny showed why she's very good at these games now, and he I'm more fine with her coming back after this showing versus after Total Madness because I feel like we got to know Jenny more, and I wouldn't say she was an underdog this season, but being an angel, she did have a target on her, and she showed that other than bananas, she doesn't really play well with anyone, and that could make her quite an interesting figure moving forward. Jordan, the Ultimate Challenge champion, getting his fifth win, not going into a single elimination the entire season. Wow. He's never done that before. Truly an elite competitor, one of the best to ever play. I expect him to be back again, and that's good, truly amazing. And that's it. The Battle of the Eras is over. Another challenge season done and concluded. One of the most iconic seasons, I'm sure, with a very interesting result. I'm definitely looking forward to the next season, All Stars Arrivals, and other future seasons moving forward. Until next time, for any Survivor challenge or any other stuff, I'll be back again. Keep in touch. Void Tune out.